Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from OnlinePhotographyTraining.com. Welcome to my video series, Learn Lightroom CC, also known as Lightroom in the Cloud. In this episode, I'm going to give you an overview and give you some navigation tips on using the mobile version of Lightroom. And really, right off the bat, I should clarify some terms. In the past, Adobe would call the mobile version of Lightroom, Lightroom Mobile. Well, in their quest to make things as difficult and confusing as possible, they now call the mobile version of Lightroom, Lightroom. That's it. It's just called Lightroom. It's not even called Lightroom CC. It's just called Lightroom. Now, of course, the desktop version that syncs with the mobile version, the desktop version is called Lightroom CC. And you'll remember in previous videos, we would sync images by syncing collections in Lightroom CC. And when you open up the mobile version of Lightroom, called Lightroom, you'll see these images here. Now, once you have Lightroom open, it works very similarly to Lightroom CC, but because it's a touch interface, there are some slight differences, and we're going to go over that. And one thing, this demonstration will be done on a 12.9-inch iPad Pro. This is the latest iPad Pro, probably was announced around November of 2018. I'm sure if you have an Android tablet, some things are going to be a little bit different. Also, mobile phones are going to be considerably different, and I'll do a video on a mobile phone, the mobile phone version of Lightroom in the future. And I'm going to probably do 2 videos on the tablet version of Lightroom. In this video, as I mentioned, it's more of an overview and some navigation tips. Now, first of all, when you open up Lightroom on your tablet, you'll be presented with something very similar to this. If you don't see this, if you look at the very top left-hand corner, that little like bookcase thing or book thing, if you click there, you can see how that opens and closes this left-hand panel. Now, it's very similar to Lightroom CC. On the left-hand panel at the very top, we have the All Photos Gallery. These are all the images that I synced from Lightroom CC to the cloud. So they're all here on my tablet. Now, you'll notice that the postage stamp view is very small. If you'd like to make those bigger, you just pinch and zoom. So take your index and thumb and place it anywhere on the right-hand side where the images are, and just kind of push your fingers apart from one another, and you can see how it's showing a sample image and what size it is. So then now they're a lot bigger. If you want to make them a little smaller, just pinch in. So again, put your thumb and index finger down, and you could adjust the size of these images. Now, when you adjust size, they go across all the galleries and all the albums. So if I go to like this album, images I'm currently processing, so you can see how big they are. If I go to pinch and zoom, or pinch and zoom out like that, how they're really small. Now I'll go back to all photos, and you can see they're really small. So basically, when you adjust the size in one place, that size you adjusted it to carries through everywhere. Now, I mentioned we have these galleries at the top. I'll make it a little bigger. If you click that left-facing arrow right down there, and we'll roll that down, you can see that there's other galleries there. We have Lightroom camera photos. These are images that I've actually taken with my iPad with Lightroom, not just images you take with the camera of your iPad. You take these from within Lightroom. And to do that, if you look over in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see there's a little camera icon. If I click on that, it opens up the camera app in my iPad. Now you can see it's blank, and that's because I have my iPad on a base and it's blocking the camera. But then if I took a picture right now, that image will show up in that gallery. Now I'm going to close this down. In the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little X there. I'll click there, and that's closed down. So that's that Lightroom camera photos gallery. Below that are recently added. These are just the images in the order they were added, in basically date order. And you could scroll up and down by just dragging your finger up and down across the face of your tablet. Below that are images of people, and you can see I don't have any here. So these are the galleries along the top. Below that are the albums, and you could remember, again, because they want to make things as confusing as possible, in Lightroom CC, they're called collections. So we have collections in Lightroom CC. You sync a collection, and when you sync the collection, it will be an album in the mobile version of Lightroom. Also, in Lightroom CC, you have collection sets. When you sync a collection set, that becomes a folder in the mobile version of Lightroom. And you can see that where it says albums, I have a folder called My Pictures. If I tap there, I have five what do you call these things again? Albums, 5 albums within that folder. And each, there's the Buffalo Zoo. And you can remember from previous videos where I sync these images. Now, I have outside of that folder, I have another album called Images I'm Currently Processing. And there's images there. And you'll notice that each of those albums has 3 dots to the far right. Wherever you see 3 dots, that's telling you there's a menu there. And if we click on those 3 dots, you can see that there's a menu there that I could add photos. Now, we've covered how to add photos with Lightroom CC. That's Lightroom for the desktop. So we've added photos, they synced with the cloud, they show up on our iPad. Well, you could actually get images onto your iPad directly from your iPad or from your tablet. Excuse me if I say iPad. If I do, it just means tablet, any tablet device. Now, you can see there's add photos, and there's 3 different ways you could do that. And if I click there, you can see from the camera roll. So if I click on that, it's going to open up my camera roll if I click properly. And there's the images that are on my iPad on my camera roll. And let's say I want to bring that one into Lightroom. So I'll just click and it's selected. If I want to deselect it, just tap it again. And then at the bottom, add 1 photos. And then it added that image. Now that's one place or one location you could bring images into the mobile version of Lightroom. And it's not called that, I know. But anyway, and notice it brought it into that album. So if I wanted to bring images into the Buffalo Zoo album, let's say, I could click on that one, add photos from my camera roll. And I don't have a zoo image here, but let's just say I did, and then I'd click it and bring it into that album, okay? So we'll go back here. We'll go to Add Photos. And at the very bottom, I'm going to skip that middle one for a minute. You see From Files. Now, with the iOS and Apple ecosystem, we have iCloud. Now, I'm not sure what Windows versions have and Android versions have. But in this case, when I click From Files, it's opening up my iCloud. And these are the images I have on my iCloud. So if I want to bring that one in, I just tap on it. It automatically will bring it in. So that's an image from my iCloud. Now I skipped that one in the middle because that says all photos. Let's go and I'll show you real quick. From all photos. What that is really here. So if I have an image that isn't in an album, and I want to put it in an album, I could go to the album, click on that 3 dots, go to Add Photos, go From All Photos. It's just showing all my photos that are on my iPad. And let's say I want to bring that one, and I click Add Photos. And then it brought that into this album. So that's all that is. Now, again, these 3 dots, that's Add Photos that they're at the top. That's also accessible over here on the bottom right. You could see that there's this little icon with a plus sign on it. If I click on that, that's the same thing. From the camera roll, from all photos, or from files. And that will bring your images into this album. Now, over on the far right, you'll notice we have 3 dots in the top right-hand corner. If you click there, there's different settings you could adjust here. You could different sorts. You could sort by capture date, how you want them displayed, but that's called segmentation. You could just experiment here and see what works for you. We also have add photos here. So you have add photos in 3 different places. You also could do a slideshow of the images that are currently being displayed. And there's also settings down here. And I just want to cover one thing real quick. You're noticing when I'm tapping around, there's that red dot appearing. That's actually a feature of Lightroom that is normally turned off. If you go to settings and you go to gesture shortcuts, you can see at the bottom right here where it says interaction, show touches. I have that toggled on, and that's creating that red dot, which is helping you see where I touch and, whatever. Now, I have my iPad in airplane mode, and the reason why I have it in airplane mode is because I didn't want notifications to keep interrupting us as I'm doing this video. So you'll notice that next to those three dots, you'll notice that that little cloud has the exclamation point there. That means that it cannot sync at all. As you're doing adjustments or moving images from albums to albums and things like that, it will sync with the cloud. So then when you open up Lightroom CC on your computer, everything will get synced. Your adjustments, your moving from albums, whatever. But because I'm in airplane mode, none of that is being synced. To the left of that, you'll see there's this kind of little wine glass thing. That's just filtering. So if you want to filter your view of images by the star rating or by whether it's picked or rejected or what type of media it is, keywords, whether or not it's edited, you could do all that with that filter icon. Now to the left of that is a magnifying glass, and you can see that's grayed out. That's just to search for an image. And I mentioned Lightroom CC, that's the Lightroom that's on the desktop. Lightroom CC uses a new search technology that isn't available yet in Lightroom Classic CC. It's called Sensei, and it basically could recognize, it uses artificial intelligence, and it could recognize, let's say there's a tree in your image or a bird in your image. Just kind of knows. And so if you search for images with birds, theoretically it will show all the images that are on or in this album. Or if I was up here in all photos and I click that magnifying glass and I search for birds, it would show all images that are on my iPad basically of birds. The reason why it's grayed out though is because I'm in airplane mode. It needs to access the internet. Apparently the database it uses and the artificial intelligence it uses to do this search is not like inherent in the program. It has to access it online. So that's why that is like that. Now, once you find an image and you want to process it, you could just click on it, right? And you can see that it opened up this image, and we're now in the edit panel. Now, if I want to close down the edit panel, I could just click in the top right hand where that little slider icon is, and I could open and close that. If I just tap on the image once, it will just give me a full view of the image, and it could tap on it again and it will shrink back down. I could open up that panel, touch the image, and it opens it up. Touch it again and it shrinks it down, and it keeps that panel open. Now we have the edit panel on the far right. Below that we have presets. Now any presets that you imported into Lightroom that you either created yourself or images you imported on your desktop that you might have purchased, like images or presets you purchased from me, unfortunately they don't show up in the mobile versions of Lightroom. They have their own sets of presets, and there's no way to import, at least as of the making of this video, no way to import third-party presets into the mobile version of Lightroom. Below that we have cropping. Below that we have the healing brush, and it works identically to the healing brush in other versions of Lightroom, desktop version, Lightroom Classic CC, and Lightroom CC. You have this little drop down, and you have the clone mode or the heal mode, and you have the size, feather, and opacity. Now below that, these are local adjustments, and if you click there, well, what is it? Is it the brush, or is it the graduated filter? Is it the radial filter? Well, it's all of them. And what I mean by that is when you click on that, you'll notice in the far left-hand corner now we have a plus sign. If you click on that, it opens up, and you can see that on the far left is the brush. Below that is the radial filter, and below that is the gradient, or the graduated filter, I'm sorry. So let's say you wanted to brush something, you would click on the brush tool, and then we have the different, soft brush, large brush, and you could then come in and brush things. It gives you instructions on the radial gradient or radial filter. It's telling you to drag on the photo to create a radial gradient, like that. And, so I'm going to cancel out of that. We're going to cover this in a future episode. I'm going to go into more detail on how to use these local adjustments. But just be aware that they're over here under this plus sign. And below that, these are copying. It's grayed out now, but right below that local adjustment, right there where it's grayed out, that's to copy any processing you've done from or of the image. Here, we'll go to there, to the edit. There, any adjustments you did to a previous photo, you could copy just the adjustments or everything. That includes cropping and everything else in case there's nothing there. So we could go now, we could undo. If you look at the top, you could see right there, undo, undo, like that, or you could redo right there. Now, as far as actual editing, when you're editing, you could do an auto edit right here. I'm not going to do it. We have our profiles, and you could browse the profiles there, and you could see that we have the profiles favorites, and then we have the Adobe profiles. We have the camera matching profiles. We have an artistic grouping, black and white grouping. We have modern, and we have vintage. Now again, any profiles that you created yourself and imported or something you got from a third party, like presets, they don't show up in the mobile version of Lightroom, at least not as of yet. Now we have pretty much standard editing. We have the light section with exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. Clarity is in a different spot in Lightroom CC. One little tip I want to give you. Remember with the desktop versions of Lightroom, if you wanted to get a white or black point, you would hold the Alt or Option key in when you adjust the slider, and that will turn the screen either white or black, and you could tell where you're clipping and could adjust it accordingly. With the mobile version, there's of course no Alt or Option key. So to do it, what you would do, let's say I want to get a white point on this image. I would click on this or put my finger on the whites slider. Then just take now I have my right hand on this whites slider, my right index finger. I'm going to take my left index finger and I'm just going to touch the image. And you can see now how it turned black. And I could adjust now and get a white point. Very, very easily. Similarly, I could go to the black slider and put my right index finger there and then put my left index finger on the image. And let's get it going. There we go. And now you can see it turns white. Now I could get a black point there. Very easily done with two fingers. Below that, we have the color tab, and we could get a white balance just like the desktop version. We could use the little eyedropper, but it's a little different now. When you click on that eyedropper, you just can't like tap anywhere and get a white balance. It doesn't work that way. You get that active by clicking on the eyedropper or tapping on the eyedropper. Then take this bullseye and drag it somewhere, like drag it there and let go. And you can see how it gave it a real cool kind of white balance. Now, if you don't like that, click on it and let's put it somewhere else over there. Put it over there. And now you can see that's real warm. Let's go there. So you can see you could get these. Now, when you're satisfied with the white balance that you achieved, you would click this little checkbox that is right to the, like, I don't know, 1 o'clock position of the circle. And that will set your white balance that way. Now, if you want to just use the drop down, you could see that it gives you previews as the as shot. It gives you little small previews, cloudy, shade, tungsten, you can see is real cool. We could go to shade, that's very warm. So we'll go to as shot. So, or you could just come in and move the sliders if you'd prefer. In that case, I'm just going to leave it as shot. Vibrance and saturation are here. You can see I have saturation turned up. Below that, we have effects. We click there, and that's where clarity is, and we have dehaze there as well. And again, I am going to, in our next video, I think I'm going to process an image from beginning to end to give you an idea of how to do that here. We have vignette, and then we have some little controls for the vignette. We have midpoint, we have feathering, we have roundness, and we have highlights and grain. Okay, add grain to the image. When you add grain, the other two sliders below that become active, the size of the grain and the roughness of the grain. Split toning is here, so we could do some split toning there. And one thing I didn't talk about, up here in light, to the far right, you can see there is the tone curve. And when I click on it, the tone curve appears right on the image. And it sometimes gets a little bit kind of funky to use when it's right on the image. But you can see it's pretty large right on the image. And when you want to get rid of it, just click on that icon again. So you got rid of that. With color, right here, if you want to do it to black and white, you could click there. Click it again to bring it back in color. If you want to open up the HSL pattern, they call it color mix here. You could click there and you could adjust each color individually. And we did effects, and detail is sharpening. Unfortunately, you know how we got a white and black point by using two fingers? It does not work for masking. You know how set your masking with sharpening on a desktop version of Lightroom, you would hold the Alt or Option key and drag that masking slider. It doesn't work here when you put a second finger on the image. So hopefully that's something they'll fix soon. Noise reduction. So all that is here. Again, I'll cover this in more detail. And there's optics, remove chromatic aberration, and enable lens corrections. Unfortunately, it doesn't really show you any more info beyond that. And we have geometry settings that are very similar to the desktop version. Now, one other thing I want to show you real quick. And in our next video, we'll get a little more in depth on everything. But if you'll notice, we got our image. And you remember on the desktop version, we had some info over here in the top left-hand corner, like camera used and stuff like that. Well, if you take and two fingers, now it's not a double tap, it's just two fingers, and tap on the image once, you'll notice that we have info up there in the left-hand corner. Also, it's showing the flag status and whether or not it has any star rating. If I want to see some different info, just tap right on those letters. And now we see it was 1/200th of a second, f/5.6, ISO 100, 500 millimeters. It was a Nikon D800E. Tap again, and it's showing the name of the file. It doesn't have a title, and I don't have a caption, but it has a copyright, me. I'll tap it again, and it's showing the date I took that image. And then tap again, and we have all this other info, 1/200th, f/5.6, the size of the image, and and the date. So that has everything there. And click again, and we're right back kind of where we started. Now, if you want to see a histogram with this showing, take your two fingers again. So I got my middle finger and my index finger, and just touch the image or tap on the image once. And now we have the histogram. Now, unfortunately, tapping on the histogram doesn't do anything. But if I want to get rid of this histogram, take your two fingers again and single tap on the image, and now everything's gone. So you're cycling through either information or histogram or off by just tapping with two fingers on the image. And if you want to see more information or different information, when you have the information showing, just tap on the information to get a different view of info about the image. So I think I'm going to stop there. That's a lot of stuff to digest. In our next video, I'm going to cover the few things about navigation and some of the idiosyncrasies of this Lightroom, which I'm going to call the mobile version of Lightroom. And I think we'll actually process an image from beginning to end, so you could get an idea of how to do it with a tablet. In a future edition of this video series, or a future video in this series, I'm actually going to use a mobile phone. And the latest mobile phone I have is an iPhone 7. So we're going to do that. And I don't anticipate getting a new phone for a while. So it'll probably be on my iPhone 7. So that's it for this video. Thank you everyone for watching my video series, Learn Lightroom CC. If you could do me a favor and like and share the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, I'd really appreciate that as well. Also, in the description below this video will be a link to my website. Come visit my website, onlinephotographytraining.com. There you'll find all kinds of free photography how-to articles and videos. I'll talk to you guys soon.